Hey everyone, welcome to the PCS-Proof Podcast, where we're covering the vital things you need to know to thrive in every season of military life. I'm your host and milspouse fitness expert, Grace Barnick-Damazo, and I encourage you to join me each week as we dive deep into topics like fitness, wellness, and entrepreneurship as a military spouse so that you can maintain your own sense of identity and purpose, conquering every transition with strength and resilience. As we journey together, you can expect uplifting conversations and insights. We'll share some laughs, and you can count on me to keep it real so that together we can become truly PCS-proof. Now let's get into it. Welcome back to the PCS-Proof Podcast. I realized that this week it's been 15 years since I graduated university, and I'm just baffled by how fast time has flown. It's just crazy. I've been seeing everyone's posts from all these graduation ceremonies this week, and it just made me feel kind of sentimental about my college journey and how insanely empowering it felt to finish my bachelor's and know that no one could ever take that away from me. Finishing my degree pushed me so far out of my comfort zone and made me realize that I was capable of so much more than I had thought. Before college, I was I guess you could say coasting. Everything felt kind of easy. I didn't have to try very hard. But when I got to college, I realized that there were so many people who had this just discipline about studying and academics that I just didn't have. And it really pushed me to have to level up my game in order to keep up. And in case I haven't mentioned it before, I do have a bachelor's of science in animal biology. I know, weird, right? But it's surprisingly applicable to where I ended up. Part of my degree program required that I complete a senior practicum or a thesis on a study area of my choice, and I needed to have an academic advisor supervise and provide that final stamp of approval of its completion in order to get my degree. So I spent most of my college career studying viruses. I always loved viruses. They just fascinate me, specifically HIV, and I loved studying people. And I used my degree in animal biology to study how diseases and viruses can spread throughout populations of humans based on not just biology, but sociology, the study of humans. So I knew I really wanted to study HIV, and I wanted to look into all of the reasons why there were higher incidences of HIV infection among Native American populations within the United States. And with that in mind, I go off to find an advisor. I interviewed with a handful of professors, all of which were helpful and very supportive. But then I ended up interviewing with this emeritus professor in the School of Public Health. This man had been in the game since before HIV even existed. He had been on the front lines in San Francisco as this mysterious disease was ravaging the population of homosexual men at that point, and no one could figure out why. And he continued to be a major influencer of continuing research through the next few decades. And I'm telling you all of this because when I presented my thesis project to him and asked him to be my advisor, the first thing that he told me to do was look into stress. I was really stunned. I thought I was going to be studying how viruses work on a molecular level, but instead he was telling me to study stress? But who was I to question this wise, experienced, renowned professor? So I did. I dove deep into studying stress and how long-term stress can result in higher incidence of almost every preventable disease we see today. It is a silent, potent driver of health outcomes. And since then, I've been acutely aware of this connection. He changed the course of my career with his wise guidance. And I think about him a lot. So today we're going to start a crucial 3-part series on stress and how it impacts the health and fitness of military spouses. And I'm so happy that we're going to be covering this because this is what I studied in college. But even more so, I'm excited to be covering this because this was a topic that was specifically requested by one of you listening. I received this listener question on Spotify. How does stress affect our bodies, especially for fitness? Why is it important to manage stress? And this is such a great question and really insightful because I talk about stress in almost every episode. And as a general statement, I think that we all talk about stress a lot, so much so that it almost takes away from the meaning of the actual term. It's kind of lost its potency, and we've lost some of the reverence for how impactful stress is on our health, both now and decades from now. So in this first episode, we'll break down what stress is, why it's important to talk about stress, and we're going to explore the different types of stress that we face, how our body responds, and the potential health outcomes of chronic stress.
Hey, fellow milspouse. Ever felt the frustration of being forced to restart your fitness routine every time military life throws you a curveball? Whether it's a PCS, a deployment, or a short-term assignment, disruptions can make progress feel nearly impossible. But now there's a solution designed just for you. The PCS-Proof Fitness Program from FitPath Coaching. Designed by a woman in military life, for women in military life. It's flexible, adaptable, and affordable. No more setbacks or starting over, just steady progress on your terms. Visit fitpathcoaching.com/PCS-proof-fitness to start your journey today. And as a special offer for our podcast listeners, get your first month free with promo code POD4FREE. That's POD, the number 4, FREE. Say goodbye to stress and frustration and hello to a stronger, healthier, happier you with PCS-Proof Fitness. Join us today and get ready to conquer any challenge military life sends your way. PCS-Proof Fitness, join today.
So let's start with the basics. What is stress? Simply put, stress is our body's natural response to any demand or any challenge. Think of it as your body's alarm system gearing us up for potential threats that we face. Whether it's a physical threat or an emotional one, your body reacts with a fight or flight response. And this reaction is key for our ancestors' survival. It helped them react quickly to dangers that they faced. But why should military spouses and women in military life today care about managing stress? We don't have the same threats and dangers that our ancestors faced, but we have unique ones that happen today. So while stress is a natural part of life, again, it goes back to our ancestors, chronic stress can have serious effects on our health and our well-being, and it can affect everything from your physical health to your mental and your emotional state, and even your relationships. So understanding and managing stress is really crucial for maintaining a healthy, balanced life, especially given the unique challenges that military families face. There are many types of stress out there, and through academic study, we've found that there is an absolute correlation between most of these types of stress and many of the top diseases that we see in our country. But we military spouses and women in military life experience an additional range of unique stressors. Let's break them down. So we have deployment stress, anxiety and worry that comes with your spouse being deployed for long periods of time. We have frequent relocations. We have to constantly move and have to adapt to new environments, new schools, new jobs, new social circles. There are financial stressors, managing finances on a single income or dealing with unexpected expenses. There's also isolation and loneliness, and those feelings of loneliness due to those frequent relocations and the nature of military life can cause additional stress. There's also uncertainty and fear for our loved one's safety. And there's constant worry about our spouse's safety during deployments especially. There is an overload on our role overload. So managing household responsibilities, parenting, sometimes your own career, especially during deployments and detachments, those all cause additional stress. Moreover, reintegration challenges, adjusting to your spouse's return home and reestablishing new family dynamics or old family dynamics that have kind of gotten thrown out the window. There's health and well-being concerns, often prioritizing our family's needs or our spouse's needs over our own health. And lastly, there are employment and career challenges that cause additional stress, having to manage finding or maintaining steady employment during PCSs and detachments and deployments. Those all add an additional layer of stress on top of what civilians face, right? Now we need to talk about what happens in our body during those stress periods. We're going to break down our stress into two different categories, just to make it simple. We're going to talk about short-term stress, which we call acute stress, and long-term stress, which we call chronic stress. So during periods of acute or short-term stress, our body perceives a threat, and our brain's amygdala is going to send out a distress signal to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is going to activate the sympathetic, we can call that the stress system, the sympathetic nervous system, including the pituitary and the adrenal glands, and they will release adrenaline and noradrenaline. When these things happen, your heart rate and your blood pressure are going to increase. Your airways expand. Blood flow is redirected to the muscles, and cortisol is released to trigger the release of glucose quickly into the bloodstream for immediate energy. These changes prepare your body to either fight or flee, right? That fight or flight response. And they will typically resolve or end once the threat is gone. This is an acute stress response. So we need all of that to happen so that we can either be prepared to fight that threat or flee from that threat. And then once the threat is gone, the response shuts off. We go back to our normal. However, during chronic stress, that stress response, that fight or flee response, does not turn off. It never resolves. And so our body is continually activating this HPA, that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, leading to constant cortisol release, that constant release of that hormone cortisol. And elevated cortisol levels suppress the immune system. They increase blood pressure, like we talked about before, and that can alter our metabolism. It can cause muscle tension, and it can also disrupt our sleep cycles. And this prolonged stress can also lead to anxiety, depression, and cognitive impairments. Our body is not meant to be in this constant stress state. That's the exact opposite of how our stress response was supposed to work evolutionarily. We're not meant to be in a fight or flight state 24/7. And this is why it's so important that we focus on stress management as a major part of our health journey, because chronic stress can have serious health consequences. Here are some potential outcomes: high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, gastrointestinal problems, chronic pain. We can also have increased risk of anxiety, depression, and PTSD. Health disturbances like insomnia or just poor quality sleep. We can have a weakened immune system, so that leads to more frequent illnesses or longer recovery times from illness. And we can have problems with our memory, our attention, and our decision making. And I'm not trying to scare you, but it is so clear that chronic stress can impact every aspect of your health and your well-being. And so I feel like it's my responsibility to not shy away from this topic and to just give it to you straight. Because if we choose to just ignore this and just talk about the light stuff, the surface level stuff, it's all important, right? But we would be missing likely the most important predictor of your long-term health outcomes. And I feel strongly that you deserve better than that. So that's all for part one. I know it's a little teaser, right? So far, we've covered what stress really is, not talking about it in this very generic term, but what stress really is and how it shows up in unique ways in military life, on top of the normal causes of chronic stress for non-military civilians. And we've talked about how our bodies respond differently to chronic stress versus to acute stress. So we just kind of teased it. In our next episode, we'll explore how stress specifically impacts your fitness goals, how it can be a positive impact on your fitness goals, and more importantly, how not managing your chronic stress can make it more difficult, or in extreme cases, can derail your progress toward the results you desire. And then in part 3, we'll dive into specific action steps that you can start to take to reduce your chronic stress and prevent these negative health outcomes and reduced fitness results. So stay tuned. We've got a lot to cover in these next few episodes. It was too much to put into just one. So hope you'll join me for part 2 and for part 3. Remember that understanding stress and its impacts is the first step toward managing it effectively. I am so grateful that one of you was brave enough to ask the question so that I can have this important conversation with our entire community. If you have a question or a topic that you'd like me to cover, please reach out to me. And can I ask you a favor? It's going to take you less than 30 seconds. Can I ask you to take a moment, just a moment, to leave a 5-star rating for this podcast? I love feeling like I'm talking to each one of you individually, as if we're just chatting over coffee. But my mission is to empower more women just like you to start or continue their fitness journeys so that they can too thrive in military life. So I'm asking for your help. I'm enlisting you to join me in this mission. Will you help me spread the word and help me reach more women who need to hear these episodes? I would really appreciate it, and I'd be so grateful for your support. I hope that you have an amazing week ahead.
And here is the legal language. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or fitpathcoaching.com. Moreover, we are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast.